much. It is wonderful to be with you. I want to thank Jerry McEntee and Tom Buffenbarger. I want to thank your Congressman, Tim Ryan. Also, I want to recognize Representative Ron Gerberry, Representative Linda Boland, Representative Lorraine Fendy, Representative Sandy Harwood. I also want to thank Shelley Murray, the school board president, and Amy Litke, the student rep to the school board. And I particularly want to thank the Cheney High School and East High School marching bands. Well, hello, Youngstown. How are you tonight? I am thrilled to be here with all of you. And it is great to see this enthusiasm and this energy. And tonight, I want to talk to you about the choice you have in this election and why that choice matters. It is about picking a president who relies not just on words, but on work, on hard work to get America back to work. That's our goal. You know, when I think about what we're really comparing in this election, you know, we can't just have speeches. We've got to have solutions, and we need those solutions for America. We've got to get America back in the solutions business, because while words matter, the best words in the world aren't enough unless you match them with action. But this election is not about me or my opponent. It is about you. It's about your lives and your dreams and your future. And I can't do this without all of you here in Youngstown and across Ohio. It is going to take an effort from all of us. Now, you may have heard that I actually loaned my campaign some money, and I was honored and humbled by the support that I have received since, from people like the young mom who sent me $10 and wrote that my two daughters are 2 and 4, and I want them to know anything is possible. Or the gentleman who described himself as an independent voter, a veteran, and a generally cranky conservative who decided to support me. If we pull together, I know we can do this. So I hope you'll go to and support this campaign, because it is your campaign. I hope you will go to my website, because if you do, you'll find at HillaryClinton.com all of my positions, everything that I have been working on, because I know what's happening in America. People are struggling. They're working the day shift, the night shift. They're trying to get by without health care. They're just one paycheck away from losing their homes. They cannot afford 4 more years of a president who just doesn't see or hear them at all. They need a president ready on day one to be commander-in-chief, ready to manage our economy, and ready to beat the Republicans in November. With your help, I will be that president. This is the choice we face. One of us is ready to be commander-in-chief in a dangerous world. Every day around the world, situations arise that present new threats and new opportunities. Situations like the change of leadership in Cuba today. I have served on the Armed Services Committee. I've been to more than 80 countries, worked with world leaders, stood up to the Chinese government to declare that women's rights are human rights. And I am ready to end this war in Iraq, end this era of cowboy diplomacy. I will restore our leadership and moral authority in the world without delays, without on-the-job training from day one. One of us has a plan to provide health care for every single American, no one left out. And I believe health care is a right, not a privilege, and I will not rest until every American is covered. That is my solemn promise to you. My opponent leaves out at least 15 million Americans. The question is, who would we leave out? Would we leave out the mother I met who grabbed my arm and said the insurance company wouldn't pay for the treatment that her son needed? Will we leave that family out? And who will pay for those we leave out? I don't want to leave anyone out. I am not running to put Band-Aids on our problems. I'm running to solve our problems. One of us has a plan to actually address the growing foreclosure crisis, which is so terrible here in Ohio. I've called for a freeze on subprime foreclosures and interest rates to ensure that millions of families across the country won't be receiving that grim letter from the bank. I've proposed $30 billion in assistance to help families avoid foreclosures and to help communities rebound from this housing crisis, because no one should foreclose on the American dream, and we're going to stop it.
Senator Clinton at Cheney High School in Youngstown, Ohio. We're now going to leave that to take you to the Toyota Center in Houston, Texas, where Senator Obama is now speaking.
Give a special shout out to 3 of my fellow members of Congress who are just great supporters. Congressman Al Green, Congresswoman Amy Bernice Johnson, and Congressman Ted Edwards. Thank you so much. I want to thank all the wonderful faith leaders who are here who gave me a little circle of prayer before coming out here today. I want to thank some wonderful union supporters, SEIU, in the House. the United Food and Commercial Workers, and the transport workers. Thank you so much for your wonderful support. Now, there's a little bit of business that we've got to do before we get into the main event. Early voting has started here in Texas. Early voting started here in Texas, and so everybody has received one of these cards. And everybody knows that you can start voting today. And if you didn't vote today, you can start tomorrow, or the next day, or the day after that. But we have early voting in Texas. I don't want you to wait till March 4th. I want you to go ahead and start voting tomorrow here in Texas. You got January 19th until 29th to vote. And you can also vote on Election Day, March 4th. Now, I know this was explained to you, this is a little confusing. You're going to have to do two things for me now. Not only do you have to vote, and we would prefer you to vote early, but on Election Day, March 4th, you're going to have to attend the caucus at 7 p.m. to get us a few more delegates. Can everybody do that, Houston? Everybody going to do that? Yes, we can. And on the back here are all the sites for all the early voting locations, so you don't have an excuse for not going. And we want you to grab your cousin and your uncle and your niece and your nephew. Don't go alone. Take some friends and family to the polls. Now, we just heard that we won tonight in Wisconsin. And I am grateful to the people of Wisconsin for their friendship and their support. And their extraordinary civic pride. You know, in Wisconsin, when you go to vote, it's 5 degrees outside. But that has not deterred people from Milwaukee to Green Bay to Eau Claire, all across that state, from casting their ballot and exercising their civic duty. We also have a caucus in Hawaii tonight. It's too early to know how that will turn out. But it's too early to know. But we do know this. We do know this, Houston. The change we seek is still months and miles away. And we need the good people of Texas to help us get there. We will need you to fight for every delegate it takes to win this nomination. And if we win the nomination, if we are blessed and honored to win the nomination, then we're going to need your help to win the election in November. And if we win that election in November, then we are going to need your help and your time, your energy, your enthusiasm, your mobilization, your organization, and your voices to help us change America over the next 4 years. Because understand this, Houston, as wonderful as this gathering is, as exciting as these enormous crowds and this enormous energy may be, what we're trying to do here is not easy. and it will not happen overnight. It is going to take more than big rallies. It's going to require more than rousing speeches. It will also require more than policy papers and positions and websites. It is going to require something more. Because the problem that we face in America today is not the lack of good ideas. It's that Washington has become a place where good ideas go to die. Because lobbyists crush them with their money and their influence. Because politicians spend too much time trying to score political points and not enough time trying to bridge their differences so we can get something done. The problem is that we haven't had leaders who can inspire the American people to rally behind a common purpose and a higher purpose. And this is what we need to change today. This is what's hard, and we know this. We know how difficult it will be. But I also know why we're here tonight. We're here because we still believe that change is possible. We're here because we know that we've never needed it more than we do right now. We're here because there are workers in Youngstown, Ohio, who've watched job after job after job disappear because of bad trade deals like NAFTA, who've worked in factories for 20 years, and then one day they come in and literally see the equipment unbolted from the floor and sent to China. They need us to end those tax breaks that go to companies that ship jobs overseas and give them to companies that invest in jobs right here in the United States of America, that pay well, provide a pension, provide health care. That's the change they need. We're here because of the mother in San Antonio that I met just today, just this afternoon. She's got two-year-old twins who are legally blind. She somehow entered into a predatory loan and has saw her mortgage payments double in 2 weeks and has paid thousands in fees to try to stave off foreclosure. She told me she was on the verge of packing and didn't know where her family would go next. She needed us to crack down on predatory lenders and give relief to struggling homeowners who are tricked out of their dream. She needs change today. We're here because of the mother that I met in Green Bay, Wisconsin, who gave me this bracelet that I'm wearing. Inscribed on it is the name of her son, Ryan. He was 20 when he was killed by a roadside bomb in Iraq. And next to his name it says, all gave some, but he gave all. We are here because it is time to ask ourselves as a nation if we are serving Ryan and his compatriots and all our young, brave men and women as well as they are serving us. They need us to end this war and bring them home and give them the care and the benefits that they deserve. They need change, Houston. A year ago, I stood on the steps of the old state capitol in Springfield, Illinois, and I announced this improbable journey to change America. And there were those who said at the time, "Why are you running so soon? Why are you running this time? You're a relatively young man, you can afford to wait." And I had to explain to them I'm not running because of some long-held ambition. I know that some people have been looking through my kindergarten papers, but that's not why I decided to run. I'm not running because I think it's somehow owed to me. I'm running because of what Dr. King called the fierce urgency of now. The fierce urgency of now. Because there's such a thing, Houston, as being too late. And that hour is almost upon us. We are at a defining moment in our history. Our nation is at war. Our planet is in peril. The dream that so many generations fought for feels like it's slowly slipping away. You see it in your own lives and in your own neighborhoods. The stories I told you are not unique. Everywhere I go, I hear the same stories. People are working harder for less. They've never paid more for college, never paid more for gas at the pump. Our healthcare system leaves 47 million people without health insurance, and those who have it are seeing their co-payments and deductibles and premiums going up year after year after year after year. Despite the slogans, our children, millions of them, are being left behind, unable to compete in an international economy. In such circumstances, Houston, we cannot afford to wait. We cannot wait to fix our schools. We cannot wait to fix our healthcare system. We cannot wait to put an end to global warming. We cannot wait to bring good jobs with good benefits back to the United States. We cannot wait to end this war in Iraq. We cannot wait. We cannot wait. And 1 year ago, when I made the decision to run, it was based on the belief that the size of our challenges had outstripped the capacity of a broken and divided politics to solve. And I was certain that the American people were hungry for something new, that they were tired of a politics that tears each other down. They wanted a politics that would lift the country up. That they had grown weary of a politics that was based on spin and PR. They wanted a politics that was based on honesty and truthfulness and straight talk to the American people. I was convinced, most of all, that change in America does not happen from the top down. It happens from the bottom up. Some of you know I used to work as a community organizer with churches on the south side of Chicago after the steel plants had laid thousands of people off. And we brought together black and white and Hispanic to try to create job training programs for the unemployed and bring economic development to neighborhoods that had fallen on hard times. And it was the best education I ever had because it taught me that ordinary people can do extraordinary things when they're given an opportunity. It reminded me that Americans are decent and generous people, willing to work hard and sacrifice on behalf of future generations. And if we could just get beyond the divisions that have become so commonplace in our politics, if we could bridge the divides so that black, white, Hispanic, Asian, Native American, young, old, rich and poor, Republican, Democrat, if we could join together to challenge the special interests in Washington, but also to challenge ourselves, to be better neighbors, to be better citizens, to be better parents, then I believe there was no challenge we could not solve, no destiny we could not fulfill. That was the bet that I made 1 year ago. And I'm here to report, Houston, that after a year of traveling all across the country, after countless miles and thousands of speeches and talks and shaking hands and chicken dinners, I am here to report that my bet has paid off and my faith in the American people has been vindicated, because all across the country, people are standing up and saying it is time to turn the page. It is time to write a new chapter in American history. We want to move forward into a better tomorrow. The American people. Yes, we can. The American people have spoken out, and they are saying we need to move in a new direction. And I would not be running, as aware as I am of my imperfections, as clear as I am that I am not a perfect vessel. I would not be running if I did not believe that I could lead this country in that new direction, that we have a unique moment that we have to seize. But I have to tell you, Houston, I can't do it by myself. No president can. Remember, change doesn't happen from the top. It happens because of you. And so the question I have for you tonight, Houston, is, are you really ready for change? Are you really ready for change? Because if you are ready for change, then we can go ahead and tell the lobbyists that their days of setting the agenda are over. They have not funded my campaign, they will not run my White House, and they will not drown out the voices of the American people when I'm President of the United States of America. If you are ready for change, Houston, then we can stop talking about the outrage of 47 million people with health insurance and start doing something about it. I put forward a plan that says everybody will be able to get health insurance that is at least as good as the plan I've got as a member of Congress. And if you already have health insurance, we will lower your premiums by $2,500 per family per year. And if you can't afford it, we will subsidize your care, and we will emphasize prevention, so we have a health care system instead of a disease care system. And we won't do this 20 years from now or 10 years from now. We will do it by the end of my first term as President of the United States of America. If you are ready for change, if you're really ready, then we can start restoring some balance to our economy. I believe in the free market. I know Texans believe in entrepreneurship. We are an independent and a self-reliant people. We don't believe in government doing what we can do for ourselves.
You guys taking on the deck today?
But when we've got CEOs making more in 10 minutes than ordinary workers are making it in a year,
Gotta lay down some wood too, huh?
and it's the CEOs who are getting a tax break and workers are left with nothing, then something is wrong and something has to change. So I want to take away those tax breaks to companies that are shipping jobs overseas. We're going to give them to companies that invest right here in America. And we're going to roll back those Bush tax cuts that went to all the wealthy people. And we're going to give tax cuts to ordinary families, people who are making less than $75,000. We will offset your payroll tax. Senior citizens who make less than $50,000, we want to say to them, you don't have to pay an income tax. You're already having a tough time making ends meet. We want to promote trade, and we embrace globalization, but we also want our trade deals to have labor standards and environmental standards and safety standards so our workers aren't undermined and our children aren't playing with toys based in lead paint. That's the change we want. And I will raise the minimum wage not every 10 years, but to keep pace with inflation, because if you work in America, you should not be poor. And that's a goal that we should set for ourselves when I'm President of the United States of America. If you're ready for change, we can assure that every child in America has the best education this country has to offer. From the day that child is born to the day that child graduates from college. The problem is not the lack of plans, the lack of good ideas. The problem is a lack of political will, a lack of urgency. We think that those children in inner city Houston, those are those children, those are somebody else's problem. We think that the young child in South Texas, that's somebody else's problem. That's not our problem. That's not our child. We think that that child in rural East Texas, where there's a low property tax base and they can't afford to buy new textbooks or put in computers, that's somebody else's problem. Houston, I am here to tell you that every child is our problem. Every child is our responsibility. Every child needs to be nurtured and embraced. And so we are going to invest in early childhood education to close the achievement gap. And I won't just talk about how great teachers are, I will reward them for their greatness. By giving them higher salaries and giving them more support. And I want the highest standards in our schools. We have to have high standards, standards of excellence in order to compete in this global economy. But I don't want our standards measured just by a single high-stakes standardized test, because I don't want our teachers teaching to the test. I want our students learning art and music and science and literature and social studies. And I don't know about you, but I think it's about time we made college affordable for every young person in America. So we're going to provide a $4,000 tuition credit every student, every year. But students, you're going to have to give back something in return. You're going to have to participate in community service. You're going to have to work in a homeless shelter or a veterans home or an underserved school or join the Peace Corps. We'll invest in you. You invest in America. Together we will march this country forward. If you are ready for change, we can start having an energy policy that makes sense. We send $1 billion to foreign nations every single day, and we're melting the polar ice caps in the bargain. That has to change. And so we're going to cap the emission of greenhouse gases. We are going to generate billions of dollars from polluters to invest in solar and wind and biodiesel. We are going to raise fuel efficiency standards on cars because that is the only way that we can actually bring down gas prices over the long term. And I know you need that. And by the way, when I talked about increasing fuel efficiency standards, I didn't do it in front of some environmental group. I did it in Detroit in front of the automakers. And I told them they had to change their ways. And when I said that, I got to admit that the room was really quiet. Nobody clapped. But that's okay, because part of what you need from the next president is somebody who will not just tell you what they think you want to hear, but will tell you what you need to hear. Will tell you the truth. If you're ready for change, we can stop using immigration as a political football and actually start solving the problem. We are a nation of laws and a nation of immigrants. And those two things we can join together. We can get serious about our borders and crack down on employers who are taking advantage of undocumented workers and undermining U.S. labor. But we can also provide a pathway for those who are living here. They can pay a fine and learn English and go to the back of the line, but we've got to give them an opportunity too. We're a nation of immigrants. If you're ready for change, we can start reinvesting in America, in the cities. We are spending $9 billion a month in Iraq. $9 billion. We can invest that money in rebuilding roads and bridges and hospitals right here in Houston, building schools, laying broadband lines, putting people back to work, employing young men and young women in our inner cities, in our rural communities. That is possible if you're ready for change. We can create the kind of foreign policy that will make us safe and will lead to renewed respect of America around the world. You know, as your commander-in-chief, my job will be to keep you safe. My job will be to keep you safe. And I will not hesitate to strike against any who would do us harm. I will do whatever is required. But part of keeping you safe is maintaining the finest military in the world. And that means providing our troops with the proper equipment and the proper training and the proper rotations. And it means caring for our troops when they come home, not forgetting about our troops. No more homeless veterans. No more begging for disability payments. No more waiting in line for the VA. We have a solemn obligation to honor those who have served on our behalf. But part of keeping you safe is also deploying our military wisely. And the war in Iraq was unwise. It distracted us from the fight that needed to be fought in Afghanistan against al-Qaeda. They're the ones who killed 3,000 Americans. It fanned the flames of anti-American sentiment. It has cost us dearly in blood and in treasure. I opposed this war in 2002. I will bring this war to an end in 2009. It is time to bring our troops home. But I don't want to just end the war. I want to end the mindset that got us into war. I want to end a politics based on fear that uses 9/11 as a way to scare votes instead of a way to bring the country together against a common enemy. I want to rediscover the power of our diplomacy. I said early in this campaign I would meet not just with our friends, but also with our enemies. And there were those in Washington who said, "You can't do that." And I said, "Yes, I can." Because I remember what John F. Kennedy said. He said, "We should never negotiate out of fear, but we should never fear to negotiate." Strong countries and strong presidents talk to their adversaries and tell them where America stands and try to resolve differences without resort to war. And when we do that, I believe the world is waiting. I want to go before the world's community and say, America's back, and we are ready to lead. But we will lead not just militarily. Yes, we will hunt down terrorists. Yes, we will lock down loose nuclear weapons that could do us harm. But we are also going to lead on climate change. We're also going to lead on helping poor countries deal with the devastation of HIV/AIDS. We're also going to lead in bringing an end to the genocide in Darfur. We are going to lead by example, by maintaining the highest standards of civil liberties and human rights, which is why I will close Guantanamo and restore habeas corpus and say no to torture. Because if you are ready for change, then you can elect a president who has taught the Constitution and believes in the Constitution and will obey the Constitution of the United States of America. All these things are possible if you are ready for change. But I have to say that there are a lot of people these days who are telling you not to believe. They're trying to persuade you that, well, Obama may have good ideas, but he hasn't been in Washington long enough. We need to season and stew him a little bit more and boil all the hope out of him. But I think you understand, and the American people understand, that the last thing we need is to have the same old folks doing the same old things, making the same mistakes over and over and over again. We need something different, and we need new leadership to move into a new century. There are those who would say that you have to be wary about inspiration because you might be disappointed. Who say that Obama may make a good speech, but what is really going to make a difference is how you work our government. But I have to say that it is my central premise that the only way we will bring about real change in America is if we can bring new people into the process, if we can attract young people, if we can attract independents, if we can stop fighting with Republicans and try to bring some over to our side. I want to form a working majority for change. That's how we win elections. That's how we will govern. I want to reach out to everybody. I know that there's some who say, well, what about John McCain? And I revere and honor John McCain's service to this country. He is a genuine American hero. But when he embraces George Bush's failed economic policies, when he says that he is willing to send our troops into another 100 years of war in Iraq, then he represents the policies of yesterday. And we want to be the party of tomorrow. And I'm looking forward to having that debate with John McCain. But you know, there is something deeper in this argument we've been hearing about inspiration. It really has to do with the meaning of hope. You know, some of you know I talk about hope a lot. And it's not surprising because if you think about it, the odds of me standing here are very slim. You know, I was born to a teenage mother. My father left when I was 2. So I was raised by a single mom and my grandparents. And they didn't have money and they didn't have fame. What they could give me was love. They gave me an education and they gave me hope. And so I talk about hope. I put hope on my signs. I gave a speech in Boston at the convention about hope. I wrote a book called The Audacity of Hope. But now some are suggesting that I must be naive. That if you talk about hope, it means that you're fuzzy-headed. You're not realistic. You're peddling in false hopes. You need a reality check. The implication is that if you talk about hope, that you must be passive and you're just waiting for good things to happen and you don't realize how mean and tough the world can be. But understand, that's not what hope is. Hope is not blind optimism. Hope is not ignoring or being ignorant of the challenges that stand between you and your dreams. I know how difficult it will be to provide health insurance to every American. If it was easy, it would have already been done. I know how hard it will be to change our energy policy because the status quo serves many powerful people. I know how hard it will be to alleviate poverty that has built up over centuries. How hard it will be to fix schools because changing our schools will require not just money, but a change in attitudes. We're gonna have to parent better and turn off the television set and put the video games away and instill a sense of excellence in our children. And that's gonna take some time. I know how easy it is for politicians to turn us on each other, to use immigrants or gay people or folks who aren't like us as scapegoats for what they do. But I also know this. I know this because I have fought on the streets as an organizer. I have fought in the courts as a civil rights attorney. I have fought in the legislature, and I've won some battles, but I've also lost some because good intentions aren't always enough. They have to be fortified by political will and political power. But I also know this, Houston, that nothing worthwhile in this country has ever happened except somebody somewhere was willing to hope. That is how this country was founded. A group of patriots declaring independence against the mighty British Empire, nobody gave them a chance. But they had hope. That's how slaves and abolitionists resisted an evil system. And how a new president charted a course to ensure that we would not remain half slave and half free. That is how the greatest generation, my grandfather fighting in Patton's army, my grandmother staying at home with a baby working on a bomber assembly line, how that greatest generation defeated Hitler and fascism and lifted itself up out of a Great Depression. That's how pioneers settled the West. That's how immigrants traveled at great risk from distant shores. That is how women won the right to vote. That's how workers won the right to organize. That's how young people in the 60s traveled south, and some marched, and some sat in, and some were beaten, and some went to jail, and some died for freedom's cause. That's what hope is. That's what hope is. That's what hope is. Imagining, and then fighting for, and then working for, struggling for what did not seem possible before. You know, there is a moment in the life of every generation when that spirit has to come through if we are to make our mark on history. When we decide to cast aside the fear and the doubt, when we're not willing to settle for what the cynics tell us we have to accept, but instead we're willing to reach for what we know in our gut is possible, when we decide that the next generation deserves the same chances somebody gave us, when we determine that we're going to keep the dream alive for those who still hunger for opportunity and still thirst for justice. It will not be easy, but at some point in our lives, we all have to decide, as hard as it's going to be, we are going to join together, lock arms, and go about the difficult but noble task of remaking this nation, block by block, county by county, state by state. Houston, this is our moment. This is our time. And if you are willing to vote for me, if you are willing to stand with me, if you're willing to caucus for me, then I truly believe that we will not just win Texas, we will win this nomination. We will win the general election. And you and I together will change this country and change the world. Thank you, Houston. I love you.
The scene in Houston, Texas, the Toyota Center, and Senator Barack Obama setting the stage for the March 4th Texas primary. Senator Clinton, who is in Youngstown, Ohio tonight. 2 states will be holding primaries 2 weeks from tonight. And joining us here in our studios, Roger Simon of the Politico. What did you hear tonight from the senator from Illinois?
I thought it was a very interesting speech. First of all, I think the timing of it was interesting, that he started when he knew, his campaign knew, that Hillary Clinton was still speaking. I am guessing every network in the country switched from Clinton to Obama. I think the Obama campaign knew that. As I recall last week, after the Potomac, so-called Potomac primary, Barack Obama waited for John McCain to finish his speech before he began. He didn't extend that courtesy to Hillary Clinton. I think it may be a sign of the animosity between the two campaigns. Secondly, what struck me about the speech, a number of things struck me about the speech, but one of the other things is that it was packed with issues. I mean, he is sometimes accused of just talking in rhetorical flourishes, just being kind of a messianic candidate who doesn't talk in details. He had issue after issue after issue in tonight's speech, which after all was supposed to be a victory speech, but was really the stump speech plus. He not only talked about his usual issues, but he talked about broadband and urban policy and stopping the genocide in Darfur. And one of the most important issues he raised, I don't know if Hillary Clinton ever went back to it and raised it, because I don't know how her speech ended, but one of the most important issues he raised was Iraq. And that's because even though Iraq is off the front pages, in the Democratic Party, among activist voters, and it's activists who go and vote in caucuses and primaries, Iraq is still a front page issue. And a lot of them want to hear candidates talking about ending the war in Iraq. Obama did it both at the beginning of his speech and at the end of his speech. At least in that portion that I heard from Senator Clinton, she talked about being a strong commander-in-chief. I didn't hear her talk about ending the war in Iraq. It's possible she returned to it.
Let me bring up one other nuance in the style of the candidates, because tonight, again, Senator Clinton did not acknowledge her defeat in Wisconsin.
Right, and she didn't last week either. And I think that is simply a calculation to never talk about your losses now. She's in Ohio. She's looking forward. He's in Texas. He's looking forward. She was, I think, very careful to make a big emphasis on economic issues of huge importance in Ohio. And I think her campaign believes that her best chance is probably a bad economy, that people will believe that she is the candidate of the most experience to deal with a tough economy. And I think it's one of the better chances, perhaps the best chance she has. Another interesting line in the Obama speech, which he may have given before, I just have not heard him give it before or don't remember it, was when he said, I took some notes, when he said, I have imperfections. I am not a perfect vessel. I don't recall him saying that before. That may be a reference to the attacks that have been made on him this week, especially in borrowing some of the stylistic riffs of Deval Patrick of Massachusetts. I thought that was very interesting.
We're going to continue to watch this scene in Houston, Texas, and also we'll show you in its entirety the speech by Senator Clinton from Youngstown, Ohio. We're joined on the phone, though, by Clarence Page, syndicated columnist with the Chicago Tribune. Good evening to you, sir. Thanks for being with us.
Good evening. Thanks for asking me.
So where does this campaign go from here, first for Senator Clinton and also for Senator Obama?
Well, Roger hit it right. Of course, the big states of Texas, Ohio, Pennsylvania are critical right now for her. And she needs to reach out to those folks who are having second thoughts and feeling a bit wobbly about her ability to be the candidate who can beat the Republicans in November. I think Obama has obviously cut into her base a lot, and she's got to make that recovery.
Let me bring up 3 points that Senator Clinton brought up in her speech aimed directly at Senator Obama. These are her words. She says, it's not the words, it's the work. It's not the speeches, but the solutions. Words matter, but actions matter more.
Yeah, that's a nice way of saying that, hey, I'm not the best talker, but I'm a doer. You always want to go after your opponent's strongest feature, and Obama's strongest feature is his oratory and his charisma. Roger's right. It was interesting to hear Obama go into so much detail tonight on his policy ideas, especially the blue-collar issues, which will be very important in Ohio and Pennsylvania. But just as they were important in Wisconsin, I was just in Ohio last week, which was my native state, and it's just astonishing to see how the factories that built that state during the 20th century have deteriorated from just so many of them being drawn overseas. And Hillary Clinton was taking heat from the Obama camp for her support of NAFTA. These are kind of populist issues that are going to play really well in industrial states like that. So obviously, Obama is responding, I do believe, to a sense out there that I'm hearing from people who are skeptical about his actual plans and his ideas. As I point out to them, hey, you can go to his website and see what his programs are. You can go to the Chicago Tribune site, my newspaper, and see extensive background investigations of him and his associations and various questions that have been brought up in the past. But people either don't think of that, or it's just not something that they're doing. They still turn to the candidates to speak to those concerns, and I think that's what Hillary Clinton is doing now with her strategy in trying to raise doubts about how much substance Barack Obama has.
Clarence Page, two issues that came up. First of all, the charge by the Clinton campaign of plagiarism, where Senator Obama admitted that he used the words of Deval Patrick, the governor of Massachusetts, in a speech that we covered Saturday in Wisconsin, and also the comments yesterday in an event that we covered from Madison, Wisconsin, with Michelle Obama, in which she said essentially for the first time in her life as an adult, she is proud to be an American. Do these issues have traction, or are they 1 or 2 day stories?
Well, I think the Deval Patrick plagiarism charge is overkill by the Clinton campaign. If they would have been, maybe a little more witty about it and say, why is he borrowing his words or something like that. But to charge plagiarism, that automatically implies that Hillary Clinton and John McCain are guilty of plagiarism for using "fired up and ready to go," which is Obama's signature slogan, and they've both used that in speeches they've given at rallies since January. So it's or since the beginning of January. Deval Patrick himself has confirmed what Obama has said about how they trade ideas all the time. They've known each other a long